Hello, brain shakers, and welcome to today's episode where we continue looking at family planning or contraceptive methods. Now, we have looked at a number of other fertility awareness methods, and if you haven't watched them, they are readily available for you on my YouTube channel, which is the Brain Shakers Academy, and all the other platforms. And if you're not following, please do so. Now, in today's session, we're going to definitely be looking at another type of method, which we call the standard day method. Now, the standard day method can also be discussed together with what we call the calendar calculations method. Now, what does this entail? So the standard days method, this is basically where you have a standard that is already set to say ovulation is going to be happening around day 14. That means that it is for people who have an average day cycle of 26 to about 32 days. So if your cycle is anything other than that, then that method doesn't apply for you. It means that you can utilize the other methods, such as the calendar calculations method, which we'll describe in a little bit. Now, with the standard days method, what does happen is that you have an average cycle of about 28 days. And if you have an average cycle of 28 days, it means that the middle part or the 14 days from your next period is going to actually be on day 14. So if on day 14 is your ovulatory period, it means that you then have to avoid sexual intercourse that is 6 days prior, and then you have another 5 days after ovulation. So all this is going to obviously happen. So you have a period of about 11 to 12 days, which are your fertile periods. And these days are the days that you should avoid sexual intercourse. And anything outside these brackets then is going to be considered as your safer days, meaning that you have all the days from day 1 of your menstrual cycle to about day 7 or so that you are going to have as your safer days. And from about day 8 all the way until day 19 or so, you are going to be in your fertile period, and that is not a safer time for you to have a sexual intercourse, because it would then culminate into a pregnancy. Now, with this standard days method, what is then happening here is that you are utilizing the understanding that utilizing the understanding of how long can spermatozoa actually stay in the vagina, and what is the lifespan also of the ovum. Now, let's begin by looking at the lifespan of the ovum. We have already made mention about the ovum that on average, it has a 24 hours lifespan. That means that you have on average about 17 hours, I should say. So we normally use 24 hours. Now, 17 hours to about 24 hours, which will obviously give you around if you're using 17 hours, it will give you about 0.70 days. So that is the average lifespan, meaning that once it has then been ovulated, it will only have to live up to that time for it to then be still active and fertilizable. So if fertilization does not happen in that next 24 hours, then it will go ahead and die, and then it will be gotten rid as part of the menses. Now, when you're looking at the spermatozoa on an average has about 3 to about 7 days. Okay, about 3 days to about 7 days. Now, there's only about 1% or so of spermatozoa that is still going to be found to be motile after about 7 days, or maybe after 5 to 7 days. There's only about 1%. So we still consider that 1% as well to have the capacity to then still cause a pregnancy. So we're saying about 5 to about 7 days. So if sexual intercourse has then happened 5 days prior to ovulation, there are still chances that that would then culminate into a pregnancy. But we're saying that if ovulation is going to be happening on day 14, and then you go ahead and have a sexual intercourse around day 12, day 13, and day 14 itself, then most likely pregnancy is then going to happen. So that is the standard days method. It all entails that ovulation is obviously going to happen around day 14. And that means that you only have 14 more days to your next cycle. So any sexual intercourse that happens to a day or two prior to the day of ovulation, or a day or during the day of ovulation, then would culminate into a pregnancy. So those are your fertile periods, and it means that around that time, then barrier method should then be utilized if you want to indulge into sexual intercourse. That is, condoms can be utilized, or any other methods that would be barrier methods then can be utilized to prevent pregnancy from occurring. Now, that is the standard day method. Then you also have the calendar calculations method. Now, the calendar calculations method takes into consideration people who have different or irregular cycles. And these cycles basically may be shorter cycles, and you also have longer cycles, or you're not very sure about how long or the duration of your cycle. And this is why we say that for fertility awareness methods, you need to actually be guided to using them, because you need to be trained on how to understand your cycle, and you also need to make sure that you're looking and studying your cycle not only for 1 cycle, 2 cycles. You need at least 6 to about 12 cycles. That is 6 to 12 months of you having understood your cycle. Now, if you notice and realize that you have a 26-day cycle, that is your shortest of all the 12 cycles that you have looked at for the past year, then you realize that you have a 26-day cycle. That was your shortest cycle. Then it means from your shortest cycle, you have to deduct a 20. That will give you 6. So 6 is going to be day 6. So it means that on day 6, that is the beginning, or it is the first day of your fertile period. It means that sexual intercourse then has to be avoided from day 6. That is from your shortest cycle. And then if you realize that your longest cycle is about 35 days, during the 12 cycles that you have been trying to analyze and understand, you have the shortest being 26. You have deducted 20 from the 26, and you have 6. So 6 is your first day of your fertile period, and then your longest is about 35 days. And if you have 35 days, you have to deduct a 10 from the 35. That is going to give you about 25. So it means that 25 now becomes the last day of your fertile period. So it means that a sexual intercourse then has to be avoided from about day 6 to about day 25. It means that anywhere in between here is a fertile period. So that is the calendar calculations method, where to the shortest cycle you deduct a 20, and to the longest cycle you're going to be deducting a 10, and then the period in between then is what is determined as the fertile period. So any sexual intercourse that happens around that time then will culminate into pregnancy. And then if sexual intercourse then has to happen around that time, then other methods have to be brought into place. Utilize all the alternative methods such as barrier methods. So basically that is what happens with the calendar calculations method and the standard day method. Now, these methods all work well when you actually combine them and use them as a whole, and not use them in isolation. And that is why we have another method that we call the symptothermal method. Now, the symptothermal method is basically a combination of the fertility awareness methods, where you're looking at the symptoms themselves, and the basal body temperature, meaning that you will be checking the basal body temperature that is waking up using a reliable way, that is the oral, rectal, or vaginal temperatures. And once you have then denoted the temperature readings, then you can use also the fertility awareness methods in combination to the temperature changes for you to determine which time is actually a fertile period, and which time should sexual intercourse then be avoided to prevent a pregnancy from obviously happening. So those are some of the fertility awareness methods that you can put in place and bring up to help you in preventing pregnancy from occurring. And I want to re-emphasize that there is no one single fertility awareness method that is going to be as more effective as compared to when you bring them and put them together. And if there's anyone that wants to venture into these methods, you have to seek guidance in these methods, because they require discipline and commitment in order to prevent pregnancy, or else pregnancy is going to happen. And when it happens, go ahead and start antenatal. That is exactly what is going to be happening. So as always, thank you so much for watching this video. Now, if you found it helpful in understanding some of those fertility awareness methods, and I continue looking at the various other methods that you can actually use if you think natural family planning is not your thing, then we will be looking at the other methods as well that you can utilize. So don't hesitate to give it a thumbs up, like the video as much as possible, share, and also head on to my YouTube channel and subscribe. It is the Brain Shakers Academy. And as always, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one.